Everyone, this is Kaylee Key, and I am now presenting to you my policy speech. How many of you are required to have a sex education in high school? How many of you actually received a sex education in high school? If you answered yes to either of these questions, then you are a part of one of the lucky 24 states in the US that required an extremely important education on a vital subject. At my high school, we were required to receive a sex education, but it required us to watch terrifying and gory videos of babies being born, as well as girls whose lives were ruined by getting pregnant. These ideas represent the abstinence education that a majority of us received. These ideas are outdated, unsuccessful, and need to be changed. Keep in mind that for each state the law is different, so there is no universal sex education law. That's the problem. To begin with, I will tell you all of the things that I believe are wrong with today's curriculum in order to tell you the plan for what I think needs to be included, as well as things that need to be updated. The first thing that is wrong with today's sex education is the curriculum. Many schools never touch on educating those in same-sex relationships. Approximately 4.5% of the population in the US identifies as a part of the LGBTQ community, and this percentage is only growing as social acceptance increases. Time magazine wrote an article about 55 different studies that examined the views of young people in the US, UK, Ireland, Australia, and others. The researchers found that schools seemed to deny that their students were sexually active, which made the information out of touch with reality, irrelevant, and overly skewed toward heterosexual intercourse. According to the CDC, teens who identify with LGBTQ communities can be at a higher risk of contracting STDs, but safeguarding against transmissions become difficult when states prohibit teachers from discussing sexual orientation in class. The second thing that's wrong with today's sex education is the amount being taught. According to the NCSL, 24 states and the District of Columbia require public schools teach sex education. 33 states and the District of Columbia require students receive instruction about HIV and AIDS. And out of those states, only 20 states require that if provided, sex and or HIV education must be medically, factually, or technically accurate. The final thing that's wrong with today's sex education is the outdated views and beliefs. In 1993, schools began teaching with the directive sex education approach, also known as the abstinence no buts standard or the chastity education. This standard states four things. Sexual abstinence is the only medically safe and morally responsible choice for unmarried teenagers. Condoms do not make premarital sex responsible because they don't make it physically safe, emotionally safe, or ethically loving. The only truly safe sex is having sex only with a marriage partner who is only having sex with you. And if you avoid intercourse until marriage, you'll have a much greater chance of remaining healthy and being able to have children. These views are outdated, but sadly are still taught in almost every state due to the ongoing debate about federal support within the U.S. government. According to statistics compiled by the Guttmacher Institute, the U.S. has one of the highest teen pregnancy rates in the developed world, almost twice as high as those of England, Wales, and Canada, and 8 times as high as those of the Netherlands and Japan. As you can see by these statistics, this approach is not working because trying to scare a high schooler into implementing abstinence does not work anymore. Times are changing, and so should the laws. Some states try to shift to a more inclusive sex education, but fail. In 2010, Wisconsin's governor and legislature passed a law mandating comprehensive sex ed. 2 years later, it was replaced with today's abstinence-only policy. There are so many pros to having adequate, correct sex education taught in schools. Sex education is so much more important than any of us truly believe. There are many correlations between receiving a sex education and unplanned teenage pregnancies. According to David Bloom from the Charles Street Times, males attending schools who had received sex education were also more likely to use birth control the first time they had sexual intercourse. Although this is good news, there is still a very strong need for proper sex education in schools. Don't believe me? Well, according to the NCSL, though the teen birth rate has declined to its lowest level since data collection began, the United States still has the highest teen birth rate in the industrialized world. Roughly 1 in 4 girls will become pregnant at least once before their 20th birthday. As you can see, there's a strong need for change in the education system. Although there are many pros to having sex education taught in schools, the practicality of this is the cons that come with requiring a medically and factually accurate education. One con to teaching sex education is that it might encourage students to have intercourse more frequently. One reason for this is the improper teaching of the information. According to David Bloom from the Charles Street Times, Sex education, if not taught properly, can lead students to believe that intercourse before marriage is encouraged just because they're learning about it. Another con to teaching sex education is that it requires a teacher who is not only comfortable teaching the material, but is also adequately trained. According to an article by WordPress, it may violate their own beliefs or morals on the subject rather than continuing with the facts. This is an issue that we continue to face, as many of us most likely live in the Bible Belt here in the South, and our teachers all have the same abstinence, no buts mindset as those in 1993. When we don't have the right teachers, then we also face an issue in paying people from outside sources and centers to teach the information adequately and correctly. Along with the teachers who have this mindset, we also have to think about the teens who come from families that also have this mindset. According to the NCSL, 4 states require parental consent before a child can receive instruction, while 35 states in the District of Columbia allow parents to opt out on behalf of their children. I believe that having this option can be good for protecting the innocent, but I think that before you graduate high school, you should be required to attend a course, even if it's from an outside center, that teaches you the correct and full extent of the information. This should be implemented just as strongly as Joshua's Law is in the state of Georgia. After all, driving can be just as dangerous as having an unplanned pregnancy, and the idea that it can alter your life completely. In conclusion, there is a problem with the state of our sex education today. I strongly believe that an updated sex education with an inclusive curriculum should be required in all states and taught by someone who is well-informed and accurate. Although this might come at a steep cost, I truly believe that it would be offset by a generation of highly educated and more responsible students. Thank you.